Hello Year Sixes, my name is Miss Hunter and I'm a maths teacher here at St Benedict's Catholic High School, Whitehaven. I would absolutely love to meet you guys in person, but I'll have to wait until September. So I was hoping today you would be up for doing a little bit of maths with me. Now you'll only need two things. You need something to write with and something to write on. And today we're going to be looking at algebra. Guys, for some of you, algebra might be brand new, or you may have done a little bit of this in primary school so far. Either way, that's fine. So what I'd like you to do today is I'd like you to make the title algebra, and our learning objective, our LO, is to be able to understand algebra notation. So we're going to work for about 15 to 20 minutes today. And at the end of that 15 to 20 minutes, I'm going to hope you guys understand how to write and how to use and understand algebra. Now, before we begin, let's have a little chat about where does the word algebra come from? It sounds a little bit strange, so we're just going to have a really short history lesson. So the word algebra is actually Arabic, and it translates to the reunion of broken parts. And it was first discovered and traced back to 800 AD when it was first mentioned in a book called The Science of Restoring and Balancing. Now, algebra can actually be traced right back to the Babylonian Empire, which is around 1800 BC, which is about 4,000 years ago. And we use algebra in everyday life to solve real life equations for quantities. The algebra even helps us with buildings. We call this geometry in maths. And even mathematicians can use it to plot the paths of our planets. And we would call this astronomy. So algebra is a really, really large and important part of maths. Now we're going to keep it quite simple today, and we're going to do an introduction to algebra. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to say hello to Tammy. This is Tammy. Now Tammy has 3 bags of sweets, but at the moment we don't know how many sweets are in each, but all we know is that she has 3 bags. And I want you to have a little think. How do you think we could say how many sweets Tammy has got using algebra? So mathematicians are always looking for a shortcut, and rather than saying 3 bags of sweets or 3 lots of sweets, they always try and simplify things. So maybe instead of saying the word bags, we could use B. So we could say that Tammy has 3 bags of sweets. And that there is writing in algebra notation. Algebra is a mix of letters and numbers. Now let's imagine Tammy is then given another 2 sweets. So not only has she got her 3 bags, she's also got another 2 sweets. I'm going to give you 5 seconds. Can you think of how we could describe how many sweets she has now using algebra? So we could say that Tammy has 3B plus 2 sweets. She has her 3B, 3 bags, and then she's just got given an extra 2. So we would say 3B plus 2. Now it's really important to understand how to write and use algebra and what it all means. Now 3B plus 2 is something that we call an expression. But also, because there's a letter in there, B, we call this the variable. Now a variable is where we use a letter instead of a number. And it's because we don't know what that number is. We don't know how many sweets are inside that bag. Now sometimes this can change, and that's why it's called a variable, because it varies. So the variable is always the letter. We also have things called terms. Now terms, you can see 2 of them on the screen. You have 3B and you also have minus 2. So our expression has 2 terms. And a term is a combination of a letter and a number. Also in our expression, we have something called a coefficient. Now a coefficient is the number in front of any variable, and it tells us how many of that variable we have. So we've now got Ram on the screen. Ram has 4 bags of sweets and he's given 5 more. So we could say Ram has 4B plus 5 sweets. So I'm going to give you a little bit of time now to decide, what would I write underneath my term heading? Which of those are terms? What is the variable in this expression? And what is the coefficient? So I'm going to give you some reminders. Terms can be a mix of letters and numbers, or numbers on their own. A variable is the letter that we use in our expression, and a coefficient is always the number that comes in front of the variable. Okay, let's see what we got. So we have 4B, that was a term. We have 5, that was also a term. Variables, what's the letter? The letter was B, so that's our variable. Coefficients, the number in front of any variables, that would be 4. So well done if you got some of those. You're starting to understand algebraic notation and all of the different definitions. I know it can be quite tricky because it's brand new. Let's try another. Okay, we have Macy. She has a bag of sweets, 1 bag, and she's given 2 more. So we would say she has B plus 2, 1 bag plus 2. I'll give you 10 seconds to say out loud or write down what are her terms, what's the variables, and what is the coefficient in this expression. Okay, let's see what you've got. The terms would be B and also 2. The variable, the letter in this expression is B, and coefficients, any numbers that come in front of the variables. Well, as you can see, there's no number in front there, but we do have 1 lot. But mathematicians, we don't really write 1 if there's only 1 variable. We're always looking for a shortcut. So you don't need anything underneath the coefficients heading. Okay, let's make this a little bit trickier and we'll have another go. Wow, Cassie, she's got 2 boxes of sweets. We'll call the boxes X. 5 bags of sweets, we're calling the bags B. And then she's given 4 more sweets. So her expression for how many sweets Cassie has would be 2 X's, 2 boxes, plus 5B, 5 bags, plus 4 individual sweets. Okay, I'll give you a little bit more time now. Can you decide, what do you think terms are, what are variables, and what are the coefficients in this expression? Off you go. Okay, let's see what you've got. So the terms, 2x would be a term, 5b would be a term, and 4. Variables, any letters. We have x and we have b. Coefficients, the numbers in front of any variables. We have a 2 in front of the x and we have a 5 in front of the b. So well done, guys, if you got any of those. Are you ready to make it a little bit harder? Okay. Let's go for this one. So describe the part of this expression. 3x minus 3 minus 2d. I'll give you 30 seconds to think of what's the terms, what's the variables, and what are the coefficients. Okay, guys, let's see what you've got. 5x is a term, minus 3 is a term, Minus 2d is also a term. Variables, the letters. We have x and we have d. Coefficients, the numbers that come in front of the variables. We have 5, and I wonder if I've caught anyone out here. Have you wrote 2 or have you wrote minus 2? Well done if you wrote minus 2. That one was a tricky one. Okay, last one we're going to practice. Off you go. Write it down or say it out loud and tell me the terms, variables and coefficients of this expression. Okay guys, the terms. We've got 4. Minus 3t plus 6x and minus 0.1y. The variables, that's the letters. T, x, y. Well done if you've got any of those. And here's the tricky bit. The coefficients, the numbers that come in front of any variables. Did you write 3 or did you write minus 3? Well done if you wrote negative 3. Positive 6 and negative 0.1, or some people say minus 0.1. Well done guys, that was a really tricky question. And you're practicing and probably getting better at identifying the different parts of our expressions. You can see what's a term, what's a variable, and what a coefficient is. Oh, there's a really tricky one on the screen now. Okay, I did say last one, but we'll go for this one. I'll give you 40 seconds. Okay guys, the terms. 5g squared, that's the first time we've seen something squared or to the power of 2, but it's still a term. It's a mixture of numbers and letters. 4f minus 6 minus 2e. Well done guys if you got the terms. Variables, the letters. G, F, E. Well done guys. And coefficients, the numbers that come in front of the variables. 5, 4. Is minus 6 a coefficient? Nope, it's not in front of a variable, but minus 2 is. That comes in front of the E. Well done guys if you got any of those. Okay, so we've had a little look at the different parts of expressions and how we identify terms and variables and coefficients. But let's get back to talking about some sweets and identifying things and describing them using algebra. So if J has a bag of sweets, we don't say bag as mathematicians, we try and shorten it down and simplify it. So we would say he has B sweets, 1 bag. But what about if J's friend Greg has 2 bags? J has B, so Greg would have 2B. Well done if you got that. Okay then, what about if Tammy comes along and she's got 3 bags of sweets, but then she eats 2 of them? 3 bags of sweets, but then she eats 2 of them. That would be 3b take away 2, or you could say 3b minus 2. Now all of these above are what we call expressions, and we express the information using algebra. But there's also something else that we use a lot in algebra. I want you to read the sentence there. Ken has 3 bags of sweets and he eats 5 sweets. He now has 55 sweets. Can you think of an algebraic expression for 3 bags of sweets and he eats 5. That would be 3b minus 5. But they've told us that he's got 55. So you can see we're putting them equal to each other, because 3 bags of sweets minus 5 must be equal to his 55 sweets he now has. And I know that one's a little bit tricky to think about, but we call anything with an equals sign in maths, and it looks a little bit like an expression, an equation. And we can actually, as you join us in Year 7 in September, we'll learn to solve them to actually work out how many bags and how many sweets he had altogether. Okay, so we've talked about variables. We know that's the letter to represent a value, and we did say this could vary, that would change, but in that expression the variable is x. We've also talked about coefficients, and that's the amount of the variable you have, the number that comes in front of the letter. In that expression, that would be 2. We've also talked about what a term is. So it's the separate parts of the expressions, and it can be a mixture of numbers or letters, or it can just be a number on its own. So 2x is a term, and also 5 is a term. We also know what an expression is. That's a combination of letters and numbers and different terms. So 2x plus 5, the full thing would be an expression. And finally, we've just talked about what an equation could be. That would be an expression but with an equal sign, and you can actually solve it to find the value of the variables. So what we're going to do now is going to do a quick fire round. I'm going to circle things in expressions, and I want you to tell me, you can say it out loud, in algebra, what do we call this? So that 5y that I've circled, is that an expression? Is it a term? Is it a variable? Or is it a coefficient? I hope you're all shouting, it's a term. 5y is a term. Next question, the x. What do we call a letter in algebra, the x? 3, 2, 1. That's a variable. Well done, guys, if you got that one. Next quick question. E. What do we call a letter? E in algebra. 3, 2, 1. You got it again, guys. Well done. That is a variable. Next question. 5. That comes in front of y, which is a variable. What do we call something that comes in front of the variable? Well done if you got it. It's a coefficient. 3 minus 3x. So that's 2 terms together. What would that make? Would we call that a term? Would we call it an expression, a variable, or a coefficient? We would call that an expression. It's a collection of terms together. What do we call that? It's got an equal sign. Can you remember what I said they were called? 3x plus 4 equals 22. And one day, when we join in Year 7, we will look at solving these to find the value of x. But this one is called an equation. Well done if you remembered that. What would we call that in algebra? 2 minus 6x plus 8e. It's a collection of terms. Would it be an equation, an expression, a term, a variable, or a coefficient? That would be an expression. Well done if you got it, guys. A half. A fraction, it comes in front of the variable. What do we call something that comes in front of the variable? That would be a coefficient. Well done if you got that one as well. That looks quite tricky. What do you call the full thing? It has an equal sign. Can you remember what we call something with an equal sign in algebra? That's an equation. Well done, guys, if you remembered that. And last one we're going to do today, what would I call that? Minus 5, just on its own. Would that be a term, a coefficient, a variable, an expression or an equation. We would call that a term. Well done, guys. Okay, so hopefully you've learned a little bit more today about algebra and the different definitions and how we write algebra down and take notes, algebraic notation. If you've got any amazing work that you've wrote down today and you would like to send it in, please feel free to send it to the email address year6tasteday@st-benedicts.cumbria.sch.uk. Please make sure you include your name, what primary school you attend, and also just make a note that you've been doing maths with Miss Hunter. Now you might be sat there and you might not have a lot wrote down because a lot today you could have been saying out loud. That's absolutely fine as well. You don't have to have done lots and lots of work. I just want to see if you've got involved. Now I'm really looking forward to meeting you in September, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I know that might have been tricky and maybe it was new, but the maths department here at St Benedict's are really looking forward to welcoming you. Thank you. Goodbye.